Hello, my friend, and welcome back to another episode of the Live Label Free podcast. I am so happy to have you here today for another fascinating deep dive into a scientific overlap between autism and eating disorders, and that is the topic of insomnia. Okay, I know I'm saying it like it's amazing, but trust me, I know firsthand how insane insomnia can make you feel. And that's exactly why I'm going to explain why autistic individuals and those with eating disorders are more prone to sleep problems and what you can do about it so you can get that beauty sleep you so deserve. Before diving into the episode, I just want to thank my patrons for... Is it patrons or patrons? I don't know. I just want to thank my patrons, I'll just say it different the second time, for supporting Live Label Free and making it possible for me to keep this podcast up and running. If you would like to show your support and love for me and my work, I would be so grateful if you can make a small donation over at livelabelfree.com/Patreon. So that's livelabelfree, like the name of this podcast.com/PATREON, and you can donate as much or as little as you feel my time is worthy of to you. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
Gotta put one foot in front of the other, and you'll be around the corner soon.
Welcome to Live Label Free, the podcast, where you'll learn to let go of limiting labels and embrace your unique brain. As my mom says so beautifully in her song,
Fear is a heavy load to carry.
which is why on this podcast, you'll learn the scientific links between neurodiversity and eating disorders, giving you a deeper understanding of how you can face your fears and become truly free. Together, you and me, we will keep putting
One foot in front of the other.
What do autism and eating disorders have to do with sleep? Much like digestion, sleep can be affected by both in different ways. So if you're on the spectrum, struggling with an eating disorder and having trouble sleeping, there is an explanation. Actually, multiple explanations. The science is complicated, when is it not? And the research on what exactly causes what is not conclusive, but there's enough out there to clarify why you're lying awake for hours at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why your body is not doing what it's supposed to do. So let's start with the basics. If you can think back to high school biology class, you probably know what a circadian rhythm. What a circadian rhythm is. Basically, it's a 24-hour clock in your brain that regulates cycles of alertness and sleepiness based on environmental cues like the rising and the setting of the sun. I don't know about you, but during the winter, I feel like I'm so much more tired and need so much more sleep, which now come to think of it makes so much sense because there's just less sunlight during the day. Anyways, your circadian rhythm is actually involved in a lot more than just sleep. It evolved to help humans adapt to all kinds of changes in their surroundings, like temperature, radiation, and food availability. A lot of your body's internal processes, like digestion and the release of hormones through your endocrine system, rely on this system functioning well. Sleep alone is a multifaceted process, responsible for a lot more than just physical restoration. It's a time for your body to repair and for your brain to consolidate memories and process emotional information. There's a reason why you're so stressed and forgetful when you're sleep deprived. Your brain missed out on a crucial period of physical and mental recovery. I also believe that's why autistic people tend to need more sleep than neurotypicals do, as our brains are constantly at work trying to manage the overstimulation of a world that wasn't built for us. Here's a little more science. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN is the quote-unquote pacemaker of your circadian rhythm. It's located in the anterior, so the front of your hypothalamus, which is a part of your brain, and receives your body signals about changes in light. During the day, the SCN, so that suprachiasmatic nucleus, delivers a signal that sets off a complicated chain of events, which is just too long to get into here, that essentially inhibits your sympathetic nervous system, so that's your fight, flight, freeze mode, and prevents melatonin, the necessary hormone for sleep, from being released. You've probably heard of melatonin before, those pill bottles lining the shelves at the pharmacy, promising you quicker and more satisfying sleep. But melatonin isn't just the name of a medication. It's a hormone produced by your pineal gland, aka your third eye, because its primary function is to let in light and darkness. At night, the departure of light signals retinal cells in your eyes to inhibit the SCN, which, through another long chain of events, stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, so your rest and digest mode, to induce sleepiness and secrete melatonin. So back to the original question, what does all of this have to do with autism and eating disorders? To start, studies have shown lower melatonin concentrations in autistic individuals. The mechanics of this vary in the research. Some studies show abnormal circadian rhythms, while others show gene abnormalities that could contribute to reduced melatonin production. These studies also show improvement from melatonin supplementation, so it actually might be worth checking out those pill bottles filled with melatonin after all. I personally take a very small dose of melatonin each night. We're talking like 0.5 milligram, which is a dosage I would suggest if you are struggling with sleep or even have had negative experiences with taking melatonin in the past. I mean, I personally used to take like 5 milligrams, and I remember that I would just be so tired the next morning because I was like, okay, this is not working for me. So then I completely stopped taking it, but then I couldn't ever sleep anymore. So then I was like, I'm just going to try lower doses. And I did actually a lot of research to like proper and appropriate doses of melatonin. And actually like the doses that melatonin is being sold like in the United States is like insane. It's like multiple times higher than what the body can naturally make. Well, anyways, here in the Netherlands, you won't find it. Like I said, it's in the US where you mostly find these like 25, 10, 20 milligram doses, just like insane. Because, I mean, on Amazon, like I said, 5, 10 super strength melatonin with a whopping 20 milligram dosage, which is just insane because the body can like naturally make like 0.3 milligrams. So like, don't even quote me on that because it's like, it's probably less. So you can just imagine if you're taking 20 milligrams of a hormone, essentially, that you can really mess up your endocrine system that way. Anyways, when it comes to insomnia and eating disorders, the research is a lot more complex. There is a lot of correlational evidence. So, for example, undereating being linked to sleep problems. I mean, I remember when I was undereating, I could just never sleep. Also partly due to the insane and torturous mental hunger that just kept me all up all night being like, oh, I wish I could eat all that. Anyways, that is the past, so thankfully we are no longer in that life. But anyways, those causal relationships aren't 100% clear. Like I said, there's a lot of correlational evidence. And this is because, as I'm sure you know, eating disorders often come with a lot of other psychological problems, so like anxiety, depression, OCD, and more. And actually, this is leading me up to something I was thinking about today. It's like how so many health professionals tell people with eating disorders like, oh, you're too complex. Like, I mean, when I was 15, and this is like basically the whole trigger, I guess, to why I wrote my book and everything, to show people that you can be told that you're never going to get better. Like, those were literally the words that came out of the psychiatrist's mouth when I was 15. And she was like, yeah, you're never going to get better because your problems are too complex. But I'm like, hello, this is an eating disorder clinic, and when is an eating disorder not complex? I mean, anyways, I'm not even going to get into this right now. You can read my book, and if you're not on my book waitlist yet, you can get on there at livelabelfree.com/book. And if you want to receive a free copy of my book when it's out, so when it's actually, you'll receive a free copy actually before it's out, and you'll receive free copies of all of my other future books. I am publishing 3 books this year. I plan on publishing another 3 next year, and I just actually plan on having 10 books published in like the next couple years. So you will get all of my books completely for free before they even launch, before they even go live, if you become a Live Label Free patron. So if you're supporting me on Patreon, you will get all my books for free. So that's just a little perk. But anyways, back to the whole idea of like eating disorders being complex. All of the comorbid disorders that often come with eating disorder, like anxiety, depression, OCD, and of course autism and ADHD, they can individually create disturbances in sleep. So when studying the effects of eating disorders on sleep duration and quality, there are a lot of intersecting factors to consider. Regardless, though, there is a wealth of research to support the claim that eating disorders aren't great for sleep, as you know. And as I just explained, like I would just lie awake all night thinking about all the foods I wanted to eat, but would never allow myself to have. So if this is you, I highly recommend listening to my episodes on mental hunger. I have quite a few recent ones that'll really help give you that kick in the pants to start honoring your mental hunger. But anyways, some studies have found that anxiety and depression significantly mediate the relationship between insomnia and eating disorder psychopathology, which basically means that eating disorders influence sleep through psychological distress they create. In order for a study to narrow down whether eating disorders directly influence sleep, it would have to control for comorbidities like depression too. And this doesn't even take the comorbid autism into account, an overlap that is just so under-recognized in the world of eating disorders. But hey, that's again what I'm here for. There was one study that adjusted for baseline depressive symptoms, and they found that the association between eating disorders and sleep disturbances remained statistically significant, but the relationship was weaker. This means that even without comorbidities like anxiety and depression, eating disorders still impair sleep quality, but the overall impact is stronger when coupled with other disorders. So again, someone with an eating disorder that is also autistic will most likely have an exponentially harder time falling asleep than someone who either just has an eating disorder or someone who is just autistic. And of course, just in air quotes, because they're both things that you have to deal with. Anyways, I just mentioned how under-eating can be linked to sleep problems, so let's dive into that. Is nutritional deficiency on its own enough to mess with your sleep? There is a lot of research to suggest that the answer is yes. One study on the relationships between sleep, nutrition, and mood found that sleep disturbances in patients with anorexia were actually more closely associated with changes in nutritional status than with changes in emotional state. This was especially pronounced in patients who developed anorexia during puberty. Anyone else out there? I developed it when I was 11. The release of human growth hormone during sleep is directly related to slow wave sleep, so SWS, which is reduced in patients with anorexia. I actually found this last statistic super duper interesting because when I was at a healthy weight in recovery but still wasn't growing taller, I got my growth hormones tested to see if I would be eligible to receive hormonal treatment because like my entire life I was just super small as a kid. Like all the class photos, like little Livia sitting at the front. And I was also actually born 2 weeks late. And I was the weight of like a preemie baby, which is just really odd. Anyways, I got my growth hormones tested to see if I was eligible, to see if that maybe all along there had been an issue with my growth hormones, but they were within normal range, unfortunately. Otherwise I could have received them. But they were at the super low end, but they were still within normal range. So I mean, I guess there's never any way of knowing exactly how much an eating disorder impacted my growth, considering it did start when I was 11. I mean, that vital growth window between puberty, just during puberty, like I never had that. But as I write in my book, and I quote, I will remain shorter than my potential height had I never gotten an eating disorder. But I did get an eating disorder, and the journey to recovery has taught me life lessons that could never measure up to a marking on the wall. I mean, I'm just chuckling because I'm like, I'm so excited for you to read my book. And again, you're gonna get it for free if you are supporting me on Patreon. So yeah, like I said, all my patrons will be getting a free copy of all my future books. And I just would really appreciate the support and love, because as I mentioned before, creating this podcast and doing all the scientific research takes a lot of time, and like I said, I don't work for anyone, so I don't get like paid per hour. I mean, like, I really do depend on people supporting me and clients and people buying my course and all that, because I've stopped doing brand partnerships as well, so that I could serve more value to you, but I do need to see an exchange there from you. But anyways, back to the episode on sleep, because again, I don't want to sound super salesy. I just want to be honest. So yeah, a quick explanation on the SWS and the stages of sleep. Until the 1950s, people thought sleep was a fairly simplistic and passive process. Then, scientists started measuring brain activity during sleep using an electrocephalogram, or an EEG. They discovered that sleep is actually an incredibly complex and active process with multiple stages. When you're awake, your brain produces high-frequency beta waves. As you progress through the stages of sleep, the frequency of those waves decreases. So, by stage 4, your brain is producing delta waves, aka slow wave sleep or deep sleep. Multiple studies have found that patients with anorexia have lower amounts of slow wave sleep. So, why is this? Again, there are many possible explanations. One is that eating disorders slow your metabolism during both sleep and wakefulness, which alters slow wave sleep. So again, SWS. Another is that anorexia has been linked with certain peptide abnormalities, and peptide hormones are hormones made up of small chains of amino acids, which are building blocks for proteins. And again, if you are malnourished, this all breaks down, so the peptides become even more abnormal. But peptide hormones are involved in regulating your metabolism and energy levels. So again, when you do have active anorexia and your body's like not wanting to build itself up, that's why your metabolism slows down, you have like no energy, and your hunger cues get messed up, because ghrelin and leptin, our hunger and fullness hormones, are two peptides involved in the relationship between eating and sleep as well. So in anorexia, ghrelin is elevated and leptin is reduced. The causal relationship between these peptides and sleep is still not fully understood. Again, there's so much complex science. However, in animal studies where researchers induced hunger, so they increased ghrelin, their subjects actually had reduced slow wave sleep and increased nocturnal wakefulness. I mean, isn't that fascinating? Some studies suggest that malnutrition is the root cause of this phenomenon, while others point towards more psychological symptoms, so like depression, OCD, anxiety. Either way, though, sleep, nutrition, and emotional wellness are intimately connected. So if you're struggling with one, it's not at all surprising if the others start to slip as well. I mean, again, our body is a holistic being. So if you I just thought of the weirdest metaphor. But I was like, if you don't have a right arm, you won't be symmetrical anymore. You have two arms. So, I don't even know what I'm saying. Anyways, all I'm saying is that you can't just try and approach one part of your health. You have to approach your health from a holistic perspective if you truly want to be healthy. So again, you are not alone. You are never alone, and there are plenty of reasons to be hopeful. I mean, I felt hopeless when I was told when I was 15, you're just going to have to accept the fact that you're never going to get better because your issues are too complex. I mean, I was I just want to crawl in a ditch and die. Literally. I was if I don't believe in myself, and now the professionals also don't believe in myself, what reason is there to live for? But anyways, look where I am now. I am thriving. I am happy. I have this podcast. I'm writing so many books. I am sleeping. I am eating, and I'm just so happy. So I hope that my story, which again you'll read in my book, which I'm just so excited for it to come out in a couple months, you'll learn and you'll be inspired and empowered, hopefully, that full recovery is possible for you, because your body is so incredibly resilient. And when you have pieces like all scattered and they're all a mess, but then when you put one piece in the correct spot and then another piece in the correct spot, and then you realize you maybe need to move one piece over, like all the pieces will come together eventually. So here's a real world example. 2016 study on 50 female patients with anorexia, and I say, like, this is another one of the things that I'm like, this is so problematic that so many of the studies are done on like female, white, stereotypical, thin patients. We're like totally missing the mark with males, members of the LGBTQ community, which will all be, I guess, accounted for and like explained in one of my future books on anorexia and autism. So very excited for that. But anyways, there was a study done on 50 female patients with anorexia, and weight restoration had a powerful impact on sleep quality. So before restoration, their total sleep time and onset sleep latency, which is the time it took them to fall asleep, I know, very fancy scientific terms, that time was significantly higher than healthy patients. After weight restoration, however, both factors improved so much that there was actually very little difference between the two populations. There is no magic pill, especially if you're struggling with multiple things at once: eating, sleeping, and being autistic in a world designed for neurotypical people, which is also, by the way, infested with diet culture. Similar to healing digestion, it will likely take multiple approaches before you start to notice a difference. Your body is incredibly smart, but it's not a machine either. If it's under multiple forms of stress, mental or physical, then its balance will be thrown off. If you go to bed hungry, it will try to get you to eat by keeping you awake. If you are constantly overwhelmed and overstimulated, it will shift gears into a state of hyper-alertness, which hundreds of years ago might have helped you outrun a predator, but right now in the 21st century is not so useful. Whatever you can do to ease your body out of that hypervigilance. What is with me today? I can't say words correctly. Whether that be coaching with me, therapy, medication, meditation, or something else, I mean, whatever floats your boat, could make a huge difference. It will take time, but little things add up. As I always say, small, consistent steps over time lead to the biggest changes. Before you know it, there will be no more counting sheep and staring at the ceiling. Your body will just drift off because it knows it is safe. And that is all I have for you today, my friend. I hope you learned as much from this episode as I did while researching. And if you did learn from it, again, please consider becoming a Live Label-free patron, and you'll get a free book. Well, like I said, you'll get all my books for free, and I put so much time and effort into creating free, valuable content for you, so it truly means a lot to me if you could just take one small action. It's literally the click of a button to give back. So yes, that's all I have for you today. I love you, I appreciate you, and I'll chat with you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Just one foot in front of the other, and you'll see around the corner soon.
This podcast has been recorded by your host, Liv. This podcast has been edited by my wonderful friend, Dharma, and the beautiful song, One Foot in Front of the Other, that you are now listening to was written and recorded by my beautiful mom, Louise Alexandra. I am so grateful for my team and everyone who supports Live Label Free. Together, we are always stronger.